Hello students, this is your introduction to your second Sgraffito project, which is a darted mug. So you know what a mug is, but what is darting specifically as a ceramic technique? So darting is a method where you cut away shapes of clay, often from the foot or the mouth of a vessel. So the darting technique is typically used vessels, things that are going to be used. Darting alters the form similar to how one uses darting in sewing. So darting is actually a method also used in fashion design when you're working with fabric. Darting is a great method for experimenting and creating forms with either a smaller base or a smaller top, depending on where you cut the darts. So we just have some visuals here. Using the technique, you can transform a straight-sided cylinder into a curving asymmetrical form. So this is a very straightforward mug, very obvious, normal, bland cylinder, but with the darting technique, the form has been altered. You can see that happening here. You can see that happening down here. You can see that happening also where the handle is. And darting allows you to make dynamic forms and expressive features in your sculpture. So again, darting is typically used with vessels just because you already have a wall and then you can cut away from it. So these are some examples of darting in ceramics. You can see it in this vessel here, right? We now like, it almost creates like a waist, right? Like think of a waistline in clothing. There's darting happening here and here, as well as right here. You can see it here as well as the bottom right there. So if we look at it in terms of sewing, right, this is a flat piece of fabric and you want to cinch the edges, right? You actually can see that in the clothing that we wear, right? These would be the parts of fabric you would cut out, and then when you sew it together, you end up with these corners. And you can see it in these two examples here of these models wearing clothing. In terms of using darting in the ceramic process, you have a form, typically a cylinder, a box, usually something circular, and then the darts are the portions that are cut out. And so you can see that here, right, it happened in these four areas, and then you end up with this four-cornered form. There's darting right there. So darting is actually literally a shape that you're cutting out, and then you're squeezing the edges of the clay back together. And you can see that happening in these examples. And there's different ways to dart your clay. You will be creating your own template, and you'll have some examples to look at, but you can see that there's these ones right here. And then if we were to actually look and see the template you cut out, right? Imagine you cut that out from the wall of the clay. You can see how it actually literally alters the form. And there's all different words for these templates. I don't really care about the word. I just look more at the shape. So you can see, with example for this leaf example, a lot of the edge is being cut out, and that creates a much more curved edge, right? And again, you can notice that the darting is not right at the top and the bottom of the form. It's more in the middle. But then with this one, which is a triangle, it's cut out right from the rim. And you can see how literally when you take those edges and put them back together, right, when you score and slip them together, you end up with that kind of form. And you can see this here as well. So you can see the parts of the clay that were cut out and then the form that was created using the darting method. So this example here, again, you'll have something like this in your resources. It gives you different ideas for creating templates and then how it actually alters the form. So darting, it can be just one area that you cut out, or it could be two areas that you cut out. So the darting in this example is right here at the bottom of the form. More examples. I'm just showing you to give you lots of ideas on how darting is used. It doesn't have to be really complicated. You could just use one area that you cut out for darting. Now, it was hard to find some Sgraffito vessels that use darting, but I found a few just to kind of give you ideas. Again, these are all using Sgraffito methods in different ways, and they're all using underglaze. And here you can see they used the darting method, and they created a foot, which is literally a little flat slab that you put underneath the vessel. So the project, though, what are the objectives of your project? You're creating a darted mug where the overall design conveys an inspiring quote using imagery, positive and negative space, and visual movement. So you're not just creating random designs, you're going to be including an inspiring quote on the outside of your mug. So you're creating a darted mug with a proportional body and a handle. You're demonstrating the ability to use the Sgraffito technique as a surface decoration and color application. You're exploring the use of Sgraffito as a decorative aspect on a three-dimensional form. That's what makes this different for project number 2, because a mug is three-dimensional. We're using excellent craftsmanship while constructing the form of your mug where the surfaces are smooth with no cracks between the seams and the handle. And we're using consistent and neat craftsmanship in the Sgraffito process as well, where application is purposeful and placement is well thought out. First of all, you're constructing the mug first. You're using the darting technique and attach the handle. So you're still having to create the mug. So you're going to plan the Sgraffito design while your clay dries to leather hard for Sgraffitoing. You're going to plan your designs on paper for the Sgraffito, including where you're going to put the quote, what quote are you using, what imagery, what designs are you including. You're going to then, once the mug is leather hard, we're applying the underglazes, right, to apply the color. Then you'll be using the Sgraffito process to remove those areas of underglaze to create your designs, the imagery, to add the words for your quote. And then once that you're done, we'll let that dry to bone dry. I'm going to fire the artwork. That's your bisque firing. You'll be later getting your work back as bisqueware, and you'll be applying the clear glaze. And then I'm going to fire the artwork again for a glaze fire. Boom! You have saturated color once we do the glaze firing with the clear glaze on top. Now, keep in mind that your Sgraffito designs must include an inspiring quote. There's so many ways to incorporate this. Now, these examples here use words in different ways and use the Sgraffito technique. Again, it's going to be on a mug though. Okay? So these are some actual examples of projects made in our classroom that incorporate an inspiring quote. So this one, we got some of the words visible and it literally follows this pathway, and then you can see different designs around it. This example of a quote, "The stars welcome him with open arms." It does have actual imagery that relates to the quote, as well as really interesting use of color. And you can see these examples here use designs. Now, the designs with the quote do look a little random. They used patterns, but that's a really easy way to create visual movement with lines. But again, there's so many different designs. You could use designs that literally help illustrate the quote, or just designs that bring emphasis to the quote, right? This one was "Just Keep Swimming" from Finding Nemo. So this one definitely had more of an ocean theme. This is not from our classroom, but it has an actual quote, "More than they ever have." And I cannot read all of that. "Hello, birdie, something, listen." But again, really interesting ways that they're including imagery with the quote. And Sgraffito designs, again, the imagery can be illustrative. It can be decorative. You will have access to this resource and you will see a lot of these examples in there in terms of imagery, right? How can we use Sgraffito in different ways to help illustrate? And this one does use words. This is really interesting imagery in this one. These are actually made by high school students. So again, many different ways to incorporate imagery. So yes, you will have words with the quote, but you decide what imagery you want to include. Now these are examples of actual mugs that use Sgraffito. They don't really use the darting technique. So let's go ahead and review the project requirements. Right now your brain is probably spinning, right? What should you think about? So what imagery will you use to convey the quote? Are we using representational imagery? Are we using just lots of random designs? Are we using something that's abstract? Your quote should be legible, right? We should be able to read it. So are you going to use a predetermined font that you find on the internet, or are you just going to freehand the words? We really need to think about every single part of the design, including the darting, the rim, the handle, what's going to be scratched away and what will remain as underglaze. You don't have to worry about that right now, but you will have to consider that eventually. And be aware you need to carve away at least 50% of the underglaze. So really don't just outline everything. Keep that in mind. We don't want just outlines.